when I got to the first race in Australia, I'm here in Formula One, almost one dream accomplished, and go out on track and we're 4 seconds off the pace.
Yeah.
The car's falling apart and we're being lapped 2 or 3 times. Kind of thinking to yourself, is this the dream in a way?
Yeah.
But I think I've always had quite a rational view to things. And while seeing Alex in Red Bull scoring podiums and, being the man to a degree, and Lando equally always into points, and that was sort of difficult to digest because I'd just come from Formula 2 where I beat them.
Yeah.
And now, I've almost just been put in
How
the
did you
corner.
digest it?
I thought that even though they're finishing the points and they're scoring podiums, I'm not here to score points or podiums. I'm here to win, and I want to win. And even though they were finishing ahead of me, we're all going through this journey together, learning. I was part of Mercedes, and I felt like my time will come.
Yeah.
So it was. I think every time from a difficult situation, you've got to try and look at the positives from it. I was driving at the back of a grid, kind of under the radar. I was making a few mistakes that season, but not many people noticed because the spotlight wasn't on me. The spotlight was on the guys at the front. Equally, the spotlight was on Lando and Alex. And if ever they made a mistake, the whole world knew about it. So I saw this as an opportunity that, I'm in Formula One, going to 21 different countries, 21 different races, different circuits. This is my opportunity to learn and perhaps try things that, for example, Alex and Lando didn't have the opportunity to because the spotlight was on.
Yeah.
Every single weekend was...
But also, you couldn't have done these things either because you in previous seasons were racing for titles and championships every year. So you had no exploration behind the wheel, did you?
There was this one race in Monaco. I was driving around. I was ahead of Robert by quite a margin. I was behind the next gaggle of cars. And I kind of thought to myself, I'm just going to bring the car home because what's the point in risking it? I've kind of achieved all I can in this race. I can't beat the cars ahead. I've already beaten the car behind. Bring it home. And there was a moment in that race that I thought, this will teach me nothing. If I just drive around for the next hour and a half, just bringing the car home, this isn't going to help me in 1 year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time. If ever I'm racing for a Mercedes, if ever I'm racing for a race win or world championships. So I just sort of turned it up and just went absolutely flat out every single lap around Monaco, kind of risking everything for 19th position on the grid because I felt like that's what I needed to do if I wanted to learn and progress. And it's from that moment on for the rest of the season that sort of every single race, every single qualifying, every single session was this opportunity for me to build a greater toolbox of experience for me to tap into for whenever I needed it in the future.
I love that because that's something that, as I'm listening to it, is the first time you're almost driving without pressure because there's no expectation on you as previously come. And then you find pressure within, you put yourself under some kind of pressure.
Yeah, I was racing against myself.
Yeah.
I stopped thinking about my teammate and I stopped thinking about everyone else because we were so far behind, we couldn't compete with anybody else. So I was purely competing with myself, and I'd have races or sessions where I finished 19th. I was ahead of my teammate, behind everyone else. But I was really disappointed with my performance because I knew I could have done better. And for some of my team at the time, it was a little bit difficult to understand. On paper, I'd finished in the same place as I finished last race, finished ahead of my teammate again. All of those boxes were ticked, but I knew I could have done better. And I think that's really helped me to develop from this difficult situation. I could have done that whole season, just tootled around, just beating my teammate, finishing behind the rest. And I'd have got to the following year. Then I'm slightly more in the game, but I've just wasted a whole season. So I think every single opportunity you've got to make the most of it. I got obviously such an opportunity when I jumped in for Lewis in 2020. And obviously he came down with COVID and jumped in last minute into the Mercedes. They'd already won the World Championship. That was probably their most dominant race car they ever produced. And I'm coming from a Williams that I was finishing 19th every single race weekend, didn't score any points. Thrown into that car and I qualified second, 20 milliseconds behind my teammate, and I was disappointed. And that was just such a learning for me, thinking, this is my best qualifying. I've never qualified inside the top 10. I've just missed out on pole position by 20 milliseconds, and I'm disappointed with that. Because for me, I felt like I could have done better. The expectations had changed, and even though that was by far better than anything I'd achieved previously, it wasn't all that.
When did you realise that? Is this a long period after, or is that at the time you thought, why am I feeling like this?
I think it was straight away.
Right.
Straight away I was disappointed with second. And it was probably that evening I realised that winning probably isn't everything in terms of fulfilling that happiness. I want to win more than anything. But if you're going out there to achieve happiness, winning will give that to you for a short period of time. But you can't live your life in that, as you said, that equation, thinking happiness is from winning. And you win once, you want to win 2 times. You win 2 times, you want to win 3 times. If you win 5 races in a season, you want to win every race in the season. If you're not winning a world championship, it's never ending. And I think that's what I've learned on this journey, and why maybe those 3 years at Williams for me, I dealt with quite well, because, as I said, I wanted to be a world champion, and seeing sort of my rivals in Alex and Lando having relatively a bit more success in the interim, they weren't winning either. And if you're not winning, it's almost, they'd already been content with their points finishes. They'd finished in the points almost every single race. They were disappointed with not getting podiums. Then Alex scored a few podiums. He's then disappointed that he's not winning. And I think it's never going to stop. I'm yet to win a race, and I'm working my ass off to try and win a race. When I win one race, I'm not going to say that's my life fulfilled. Yeah. It's, I want to win another race and another race, and then it's, I want to win the championship.
You know who we all want to be? That person. The one who's meal prepping. They've got their organic grain bowls. They come in with their quinoa, all of that stuff. We know they're also getting a full 8 hours sleep, meditating before sunrise, never rowing with anyone, and just hitting it every time. But let's be real. Who has the time for that? Like me, you've probably got loads to juggle: kids, work, exercise, pretending that you've got everything together at the same time, and something has to give. And for me, traditionally, that was energy. And then I discovered Vitals by Heights. And these changed so much for me. Just 2 capsules, the job is done so fast. And then I know for the rest of the day, my irons, my B vitamins, my immune system's being looked after. I've got zinc for bone health, omega-3 and DHA for normal heart health. Honestly, the lot is packed into these golden little beauties. And as we see on the High Performance show so often, high performers aren't perfect. They've just worked out the smart things that make a difference. So why don't you do right by your brain, your body, and your health? Head to heights.com/Jake or enter the code HP20 at checkout for 20% off your first order.
There's expectations. You don't want to let McLaren down. They're one of the most historic teams in Formula One. So like that already just puts that pressure on. I think when things start going or become tougher are when you just don't, the media is one of the biggest things. How the media portrays you is one of the biggest things. So when things start to go wrong, when you make a couple of mistakes and the media have a little dig at you, and then fans and people on social media start to have more of a dig at you, that's when that self-doubt that sometimes I would have, that grows when people kind of just add on to that, But that's okay, and I could live with that quite easily on when maybe I made those little mistakes and so on. But when people add to it and you see comments, that's when you start to feel a lot worse about yourself. And especially when I'm in my first year, it's I know my parents have put so much effort into helping me get to there. The team have all the expectations. The whole world are watching, and then you just think if this goes wrong, it's my first year in Formula One. If this goes wrong, what am I going to do if I'm not in Formula One? Because this is all I've lived for my whole life. I wasn't the smartest guy in school, and I struggled quite a bit in school. Like, what am I going to fall on, right? If all of this goes wrong, and even just having those thoughts is already.
And this is all swilling around while you're still trying to drive a Formula One car to the best of your ability.
Exactly, and always putting on like the smiley face for the cameras and all those kind of things. Like, that's not the easiest thing, but yeah, you just get into that point when, like, even I had maybe 3 or 4 races where I was just struggling a little bit, and I had Carlos as my teammate at that point, and he was doing a very good job. He was getting to grips with the car and extracting everything out of it. And just 3 or 4 races where like he beat me, and I was just like, what do I do? I just got to the point where I don't know, is this the end of it? It's like, what if I can't just find something else? What I didn't know what to do at that point.
That sounds quite lonely. Did it feel like? It is,
yeah, especially because I'm a guy who doesn't like to talk too much. I guess sometimes I do, but a lot of the time I like to keep things like hidden and tucked inside and stuff. And when I have problems, I tend not to talk about them. Especially back then, definitely didn't talk about them as much as what I do now. So a lot of it is my mind, how like I like to think of it more on my own. And
how self-critical were you being at this point?
I say too much. Like, I'm definitely my biggest critic, but like I think a lot of pros and you see footballers or Formula One drivers, whoever it is, I think they're their own biggest critics by a long way. But I think you need to learn the balance of it, and also know when to pat yourself on the back a little bit and say you've done a good job. But there was a lot less of that than there was of bringing myself down. So always having that self-doubt and that being critical of myself and just thinking on my own and not like allowing others to help me as much as I could, because I always thought it would be my fault, not someone else's. And I would hate to ever blame it on someone else. So
this is a good conversation then, because we were joined by an explorer called Nims Purger.
Yeah.
And he said excuses remove the learnings.
Yeah.
Right. So you're looking at Carlos, and for those that don't know much about Formula One, that is the first judge is your teammate, right? That's the first person to beat. And you've been beaten 3 or 4 races running by him. I'd love to know the process you went through to work that out in your own head, because if you just think, oh, well, he's been in the team longer, or he's been in the sport longer, or he's more experienced than me, the excuses are removing the learning.
I could never use experience as the excuse. Like, that was one I could... Like, now I feel like I can use it because I've learned about how much it can actually change you.
Yep.
But at that point, I would never want to use the excuse apart from it's myself. And
of course, I hadn't thought about that though. Of course, you can't use experience as an excuse because you've got no understanding of what experience gives you. Exactly.
And until that point, I've only ever done 1 year in every category I've done. So I've not spent those multiple years like I've done now in Formula One. And I just hated to use it. If someone says, why has he done better than you here? I go, he's just more experienced. Like, it's such an easy thing to say and to use. And I just really never wanted to use it. But like, now I have a much better understanding, and I can go, I know I didn't do that as well because of the experience.